Are you stressing over whether your story idea is profitable? Are you worried that you're going to get to the launching phase of the publishing process and just hear crickets? If so, then this video is for you. Worrying or stressing over whether people will read and like your book or if people will buy your book is perfectly normal, but there are steps that you can take to ease your mind. In this video, I'm going to discuss the exact steps you need to take to ensure that your book idea is profitable. In a previous video, I briefly mentioned how I don't think writing to market is a good idea and you should write what you're passionate about. This is still my philosophy, however, I do believe it's important that you should consider your readers when you write. So instead of simply writing to market, you should choose an idea that you love but also has a demand by readers. So it's best of both worlds. So how do you tell if your book idea is profitable? Can you describe your book idea in one sentence? Think of this as a one-liner pitch. In a similar way, if you've studied screenwriting, you'll know that this is how the concept of a movie comes up. It comes up with like a very small idea that's sort of encapsulated in one or two ideas. So to get you started, think of it as a X meets X. So for example, Star Wars meets Jurassic Park. That idea was obviously very niche and it gives people an idea of what your book is about. The point of a pitch is to either leave a reader interested or disinterested. The reason why you might want someone to be disinterested is you shouldn't write for everyone, because if you write for everyone in a similar way that if you market something to everyone, no one will buy it. You need to market to a very specific genre. So you want those people who adore that genre, who will love your book, to find your book, and those people who won't to not find your book. I do read a lot of thrillers and I've seen this on Amazon where there'll be a bunch of whole 5-star reviews and then there'll be like a few 1-star reviews, and when you read them they'll be from people who clearly don't read in that genre and they're like, oh, I don't really care for this book, and they gave it a 1-star review. Or they say, you know, this book wasn't quite my cup of tea, and it's like... And that's what you want to avoid. You want the people who really love your book to find it and those people who don't. If you find the whole X meets X thing just a tad too cliche, you want to sum up your story idea in 1 or 2 sentences. Like if you're submitting a query letter, or if you're sort of telling people about your book in person, or eventually maybe this will end up on your sales page eventually. People make a decision on whether they want to buy a book on very little information. Usually it's a cover. I have a stack of books in my library that I brought them because they're just beautiful hardbacks and they're in the genre I like, and I looked at them and thought, yeah, I want to buy this. Or I flipped it over and I've just read 1 or 2 lines in the back and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. This is how people make a decision on buying books. So to help you, if you can sort of encapsulate your story idea in 1 or 2 sentences, and it gives people a hint on the genre that you're writing in, and it just helps people make an educated sort of decision as to whether they will like your book. And being able to describe your book in this way, in 1 or 2 sentences, will also help you sort of realize that you are writing something that's sort of specific, that's for a specific type of people. And once you sort of talk about your story idea to other people, you'll become a little bit more confident. People will start to be interested. Some people won't be, and just expect that. It's the nature of the beast. You're creating art, and art is subjective. So there'll be people who hate your idea, that'll be like, oh, that's really terrible. I can't believe you're writing in, you know, you're writing to a genre. And then there'll be other people who really love that type of thing. This is really what you should expect if you sort of then turn around and sort of share your 1 or 2 liner pitch with people. But I think it's really important that you focus on getting your story idea down into 1 or 2 sentences. This will actually help you a lot. If your book was on Amazon, which categories would it be under? It's not enough for you to say fiction or even sort of vampires, romance. You need to get specific. You need to niche down beyond genre, beyond just a category, and into a subgenre. So in order to help you figure out where your book would sit on Amazon, I'm going to take you over to my laptop and I'm going to scroll through the Amazon bookstore and show you where my book, Immunity, would sit on the store. And I'm going to go right down into a deep subcategory just to show you where it would sit. Once you're there, it'll be obvious to you as to why you need to know this. You'll suddenly see that there are people buying books very similar to yours. So let's head over to Amazon. So welcome to my desktop I'm just going to go over to Google Chrome and go over to amazon.co.uk. I'm using amazon.co.uk because I live in London and this is the store for my country, obviously. What I will say is, depending on whether you go to Kindle books, or if you go to amazon.com or .co.uk, the genres are slightly different, which I found really fascinating. They're not all exactly the same. So when you go into the department, there's obviously Kindle e-readers and books, and then there's a separate books and audio and Audible. And what I've noticed is there's differences between the genres within these two sections, but I'm going to particularly focus today on here. So just go to your version of the Amazon for your country. I like to go to Kindle e-readers and books, down to Kindle books, and we'll wait for it to load. Hopefully my internet connection will be reasonably okay. You scroll down to the left hand side, under it says Kindle ebooks. There's a whole different range of genres and categories. The particular genre for my James Alon series, because it's a series of novels as opposed to just one or two, is crime, thriller and mystery. I think in the amazon.com it's mystery, thriller and suspense, or mystery, and I think crime has its own genre. But anyway, this is where I sort of feel like my book sort of fits in the best, and it's a thriller. It's action-packed, it's sort of fast-paced, and the chapters are really short, which is typical of what you sort of see in the thriller genre. My book could fit into a few different places. It's definitely action-adventure. It has a strong element of conspiracy. There is a crime, but it's not a traditional crime. It's sort of a crime based on... There is a series of murders, but it's more based on how these people come to die. And there's a really strong medical element to it. It isn't so much based in a hospital, but it's more of the type of medicine it is. It's more based in a medical laboratory where they look at immunology and disease. So the crime is sort of set within that setting. So it is a bit complicated, but this is just immunity, but it's more action adventure. So this is the genre I really feel my book sort of sits under. So that's how I sort of did it. I really looked into a few of the other books and sort of realized a lot of the books in here have that similar sort of feel to my book did, even though James Alon isn't like that sort of Jack Reacher sort of style character. He is he's an investigative journalist, so he's not sort of like Jack Reacher's an isolated character. He sort of moves on from town to town, which is really convenient for Lee Child to sort of continue on that series. And this is sort of what tripped me up, is there's a lot of Jack Reacher style characters in this sort of genre, and I thought, well, James is an investigative journalist, so he spends a lot of time investigating in sort of very much bigger, huge stories that are sort of based on conspiracy. So he's not exactly like these characters, but it definitely sort of fits in with that genre. And that's something that at first really tripped me up and made me really struggle to decide where this book sort of sat. And I just sort of went in like this, and I sort of read, like, this guy's like an MI5 agent. It's a little bit different to him. But I sort of realized that I needed to focus on the story in the book and not just the fact that James isn't exactly like all these other characters. So when you're sort of figuring out where your book sits in the Amazon categories, just go through like this, spend a bit of time surfing through the various categories in Amazon, and just have a look at, read a few of the blurbs and sort of try and figure out where your book sort of fits. I wouldn't worry too much if your book doesn't exactly fit, isn't like an exact replica of all the other books in the genre. What's more important is that the elements of your story actually abide by, I'm tempted to say rules, but well, the tropes of the genre. In my case, it's the thriller genre. So spend a fair bit of time really looking at the particular characters and just sort of see where the book sort of fits, whether your book is sort of similar to these other books. These two steps are important because confused readers will not buy. And the same obviously goes for agents and publishers. If an agent or a publisher doesn't quite understand where your book would fit on a physical bookshelf, they won't be interested in your book. This is actually something I wished I did with my thriller novel, actually my James Long thriller series. While I was writing the first two books, I was spending all this time writing and I was really stressing over whether they would sell. It got to a point where I honestly believe that there wasn't a book like, you know, my series. There wasn't, you know, a protagonist out there that was similar to James, and I was really starting to sort of worry, and this worry really put me off writing. It became like a really obstacle and a block. I eventually finished writing the first book, Immunity, and started writing the prequel, Silence, and I actually went through this process, and and that's when I had an idea that there were books out there that were similar to my book. They weren't exactly the same, but my book did fit in the thriller genre and also fitted into a couple of subgenres within that. And there was a part of me that sort of felt really relieved that people would want to buy my book. At least it sort of fitted somewhere on the shelf. I can't really describe how much of a relief this was. And once I sort of had this figured out, I was able to focus on writing and making sure my books lived up to genre expectations. I think that's really important, especially if you're going to write genre fiction. If you're not going to write if you're going to write literary fiction, this probably isn't really appropriate for you. But if you're writing genre fiction, this is hugely important that you write, and you write to expectations, that you sort of meet a few of those genre tropes. Going on Amazon and actually being able to place my book in a genre actually really helps me put my mind at ease. This is why I recommend sort of taking these two steps, just to reassure yourself that you know where your book is, so you don't have to sort of be distracted by what if people don't like my book, or what if my book doesn't sell, or my book's not like anything else, when realistically it is. You just haven't made yourself aware of the genre and the subgenres that are within that. So if you're worried about whether your story idea is profitable, then I recommend that you write down a one-liner pitch and then go over to Amazon and figure out where your book would sit in the bookstore. Did you find these tips helpful? Were you able to figure out whether your story idea is profitable? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you love this video, then give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, then click the red subscribe button to get notified for more videos just like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.